What's up, everyone? Welcome to Cracka, which is comics, reviews, awesome movies, comedy, and anything else I think that kicks ass. Welcome to episode 16, which hopefully will help future comic book collectors out. Tell you what you should be looking for, what not to buy, cheap ways to go around certain things, and just stuff in general about comics. Things that I love. I love to talk about comics. I love collecting them. And maybe you'll get a kick out of it. Some collectors might see some cool comics that they haven't seen in a while. I hope you do. I hope you like it. Without further ado, I basically started collecting comics in the 80s, the late 80s. I knew who Spider-Man was, I knew who the Hulk was, and Superman and Batman, but I had no idea where they came from. I just knew they were on TV and they had toys and I liked them. Starting with comics, though, it was a Saturday morning. I went to my first comic book store in '88. I can't really remember the day or the month, but my cousin Ed is the person who got me into comics. He is the comic guru. He collects them. He still collects them, and he's the one who got me my first comic. And that's what the comic bug. That's when it bit me. I was in the comic store. I had no idea what the hell I was looking at. I was bored as hell, and I'm just like, oh my god, when is this gonna end? He got his comics that he wanted, and we came back to the house. And while he was reading his comics and bagging some others, I leaned over and saw this, which is the West Coast Avengers number 36. And I had no idea who the hell they were. I just thought it looked awesome. And they say you can't judge a book by its cover, but I did on this one. And I'm like, wow, who are those guys? Who's this guy with a big W and red eyes? And who's this guy shooting this guy? And this guy's got bow and arrow. And this one's a tiger girl. I'm like, that's freaking awesome. And everyone's like, oh, the Avengers started you off? I'm like, now you know. Now you know what did it. My cousin, therefore, started to explain these characters. They said this was Wonder Man and Hawkeye, and the more he explained it, the more I wanted it. And I begged him. I said, can I have that one? Do you mind if I have that one? And he's a little hesitant, but then he's like, all right, you can have it. I can see that you really like it, and it's yours. So I got this thing home, and I went through. I must have read it like 50 times that night. I was just amazed. I was like, this is just awesome. But anyway, nostalgia things aside. Things you want to look for when you're collecting comics. The first thing you want to do is get one that you like. If you don't like the comics, then what's the point of buying them if you're not going to read them or enjoy them? If you get in just to collect it for collecting's sake, that's one thing. But you're better off getting one that you like to read, which it makes it so much more worth it when you get one that you actually like and enjoy and you want to follow the series. Basically, what you want to do is, like I said, not a step-by-step kind of thing, but I'm probably going to be all over the place telling you stuff and going through collections. Might be a couple parts, but anyway, go to a comic book store. You can look online now. When I was a kid, there was no online. You had to do it the hard way. You had to actually go store to store if you wanted to find something. So you're lucky nowadays. I'm dating myself. But go to a comic book store or online. If you go to a comic book store, it's usually cool. Comic book people there are usually more than happy to help you out. Comic book people are very cool. Guys and girls, they'll tell you anything you want to know, and trust me, they will. We're not as creepy as you think. There are certain fans out there that are mega fans, and they might be a little creepy at times, but all around, we're good people. Another thing you want to do, if you find the comic that you like, is get a bag and a board. Even if you just buy one comic, buy a bag and a board. The board will keep it straight, keep it from getting all floppy, and the bag, of course, will protect it from everything else other than the fire. You also want to start, when you start getting more comics, is you want to get a box. One sec. This is a standard small comic book box. They do have larger ones, which I do have. I'm not going to show them because I'd probably break my back picking it up to show you. But as you can see with this one, I decked it out with a couple characters, Spider-Man and so on. It helps me identify what the hell's in there because I have so many comic book boxes. It's just easier to look at the thing and say, alright, I know Spider-Man's in there at some point. Another thing you want to do when you start getting a lot of comics besides the box is, if you really want to go all out, you get dividers, which are these plastic things that go in between the comics. Only problem is that they get pricey. Sometimes they could be 15 bucks a piece, and it's kind of a bitch, especially when you're on a budget, especially nowadays. But there's ways around it. Something I recently learned, which I'm a little sad, I should have figured out a while ago, is I went to a comic book convention, and this guy actually had his little comic box, and he was using just index cards. Basically, he wrote the name of the comic across the top, and he would stick it to the comic, with a little bit of tape. You don't want to go crazy, and stick it in the box, and then everything in back of that would be that related comic. Damn good idea. I mean, what I did when I was a kid, which might be a little overboard, but I would take cardboard, any kind of cardboard I could find, and I would cut it so that it would fit in the box, and I would take just regular, like loose leaf paper, anything I could find, and write the, I would tape it to the cardboard and then put a little tab on top of the, the comic, like Superman or whatever, and just did it that way. That's another way to go. It is cool to have the plastic ones, the actual things. I mean, they are nice, but they're just expensive, and usually it's not worth it. You can just, go the cheap route and make your own stuff. Like I said, I'm going to be all over with going through stuff, and just bear with me. A lot of stuff to go through, especially if you want to learn. Like I said, number one issues is usually what you want to go after. Another thing you want to go for is when there's a death issue, if someone dies in the comic, it's usually a good issue to get. Milestone issues, like say like number 25 or 50 or 75 and so on. If a character leaves the issue, that's a good issue to get, or if a character is introduced, that's another good one to get. If they switch a team, if new uniforms or whatever, it's usually good to grab those. Variants now, they have, like a lot of comics have variant covers, which can be a real pain in the ass, especially if you want to try to make money off of them, because you don't know which variant is going to make the money. I mean, back in the day, they didn't have variants. That was the book. You got, like, when you got this, there was no alternate covers. This was it, and that was the best. I mean, the variants, they do have cool covers and everything, but sometimes it's such a pain in the ass. So usually I just tell people, get the one you like the most, and hopefully it'll pan out for you. Give you a couple examples. Another thing you want to do too is any comic in general, don't let anyone give you any shit for what you get. All right, don't let people say, oh, that's the crappiest thing. Screw them. What do they know? You like it, buy it. A good example. Hang on one sec. One comic that I got when I was a kid was the Human Fly #1, which he really never amounted to anything, and people used to make fun of me that I had it, but I just thought it was really cool, and I liked it, so I got it. It's in my collection. And people have that one. Another example, especially when I was a kid, Beavis and Butthead was pretty huge back in the day, so I got Beavis and Butthead #1. You weren't cool unless you had something Beavis and Butthead related, so I had to get the comics. Another good example is X-Force #1, which is pretty worthless. I mean, I like it because it fills out my collection. I have a lot of X-Force stuff. I bought 2 of these. One I opened to read because I had to read it, and one I kept sealed. As you can see, this one's completely sealed in its bag. I even got an extra plastic thing for it because I thought it was going to be worth a fortune, especially when I was a kid. I'm like, oh, #1, X-Force, yeah. I was wrong. Example of variants. Here's a good example. In '99, when they relaunched a couple of the characters, one variant they had was a Hulk Starburst. Damn, I must want a Starburst. A Sunburst cover. As you can see, that's what it was. It was #1. And they had a variant one, which was a red foil cover. The one cool thing I liked about this one is that I got it with a certificate. This is number 880 of 10,000. What you want to do with variants too, especially if you have a certificate, always try to get the lowest number of the made comic, because the lower the number, the better off you are, the more money it's worth. But moving on. I also got, when I was a kid, I had to track this one down because I was a huge Wolverine fan, and I always wanted to find the Wolverine #1. And oh man, I went to my first convention and I found it there. It was the guy wanted $20 for it, and my father was a little hesitant because he didn't want to pay $20 for a book, and so I'd use my own money, which was rough, especially when I was a kid. This cost me over 2 months' allowance, which was $20. So, but it was worth it because I was the only person in my school that actually had the Wolverine Limited Series #1, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, that's awesome!" And I thrived on that for a whole year. Moving on, when they relaunched kind of a relaunch, they did the X-Men #1. I loved the cover, and that's what got me started on Jim Lee. That's another good thing with comics. If you like the artist, that's a good thing to go for. Also, with comics in general, like say you get #1 of X-Men when it comes out, a good thing is always try to follow with that series and just keep collecting the issue after issue after issue, because it makes your collection that much cooler that you have, like, say, #1 to 150 or something like that. You're like, I have them all, but that can get pricey, especially nowadays. Oh my God. It's a good example right there. When I was a kid, The Avengers comic I got was 75 cents. I mean, I didn't pay for it, my cousin did, so thanks. But the most I ever paid for a comic when I was a kid was, it was $1.75. I think that was for a Ghost Rider comic, and that was pricey. Nowadays, it's a lot harder to get multiple books because they're pretty expensive. It was kind of like a roller coaster. Like a couple years ago, it was $1.99, $2.99, $3.99, $5.99. They kind of leveled out now, which is good. But you know, back when I was a kid, it was so much easier. I mean, you got $10, you went to a comic book store, you were in heaven because you could buy all the new ones that they had and even look for a couple old ones. But nowadays, especially with the economy, it's so much harder to get multiple comics. Like, especially me, my little pittance of a paycheck, I really have to budget out on what I want to get, and it sucks because I miss a lot of cool books, and then I gotta go find them and pay double. But moving along, another particular, like I said, comics that people never really liked. I mean, I loved him. I thought he was cool. Was Darkhawk. I got Darkhawk #1. I think they're trying to make him with a comeback, which is cool because I just thought he looked like Batman. That's the reason I pretty much got it. I just thought he was Marvel's version of Batman. But you know, I liked it. I think Darkhawk was cool and a little original. The New Warriors #1 I picked up when I was a kid. Like I said, anything new was coming out, I loved it. I got Nova #1 when I was a kid, which is pretty much a good book to have nowadays because they're actually, Nova is making a comeback too. He was in Ultimate Marvel's Capcom 3, so I'm hoping. A couple of the newer ones, Thor #1. I have the Justice League #1, Hawkman #1. Like I said, these are the new 52s. Firestorm. I pretty much bought almost all the #1s of the 52s because I wanted to be on the ground floor with that. Another comic that I got when I was a kid that I didn't buy it when it first came out, and I was kicking myself the entire time, was Ghost Rider #1. This one was with Dan Ketch. As you can see, like, there you go, $1.95 in the top corner, which was really pricey back in 1990. You had to, you know, really want that book, and I didn't want to spend that much money on a book. And then I had to wound up 2 years later, when Ghost Rider was pretty big, I had to freaking hunt this one down. This one cost me, I think it was like $15. I found it at a convention, and I was like, I have to have that. And but moving on. Another good example of characters that people think suck, but I liked. I grabbed Wonder Man #1. I actually have almost every Wonder Man comic. I don't know why I like him. I just think he was cool. To this day, I still don't even know why I like him as much as I do. I just think he was a cool character. But moving on. A couple of the recent ones I had picked up. Like I said, this is probably going to be a very long tutorial kind of thing, I guess, but hopefully you'll like it. I got the Amazing Spider-Man, the all-new Spider-Man, and the X-Men. As you can see, they're still in its thing. I actually got to do something about that and put it in a better plastic. But I didn't open them because I figured they'd probably be collection somewhere down the line, so I didn't read them yet. I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't read them, but I wanted to collect them. Another thing to go for, with especially like #1 Infinity Gauntlet, like series-wise, you usually want to get the entire series. You don't want to just get like #1 and #2 and then like #6, because then you're like, oh crap, what the hell happened in the middle? And then especially if you want to sell them down the line, collectors usually want the whole thing rather than, oh, you only have 1 and 5 or 4 and 2, you know. But like I said, it's all preference. Another thing to look out for, especially with series like the Infinity Gauntlet, they usually have spin-offs. Like in this one, they have the Silver Surfer spin-off. Usually it doesn't really do much to the story. I mean, the Infinity Gauntlet, in there, Thanos takes out the Marvel Universe a certain way, and it's funny because in the Silver Surfer, he takes him out in a completely different way than he did the Infinity Gauntlet, so it's kind of interesting. But like I said, it's preferences. Another one, the Human Torch. As you can see, like this was you can actually feel the Human Torch, which is disturbing. But this one, he actually burns down a school, and it was just an interesting cover, and I loved it. I will show you more in part 2, because like I'm running a little long. That sounds perverted too. No perversion intended. But come back for part 2.